it to the owner. The owner says, awesome, go ahead and do that. I'll write you a change order. They came to me and I said, no, you cannot agree to that. It has to go to the designer of record. It's a value engineering project. So the owner says, well, no, I don't want to pay the architect anymore for the service. They'll charge me more. And it's like, well, we can't do it then. They finally were able to convince the owner to pay the architect. The architect came back, the structural engineer goes, oh, God, no, you can't do this. Because guess what? The precast was there for a reason. It's part of the whole structural design that allowed for the rigidity of the building. You get rid of that and you just do metal decking, it'll buckle. And so you cannot do this. In fact, it would fail. So guess what? That's a perfect example of something where you have to stick to your gun and say, listen, you can't give me design without having someone who's licensed to do that. Okay, so if I have an idea, you got to pass it by the designer's record for the benefit not only of you as a contractor or subcontractor, but also as the owner. You don't want to end up with that liability. That's why you go to the designer's record. They've got insurance, they've got expertise. You have to have them approve it, review it, make sure everything's okay. Any questions on that? Now, what you can do is the owner can do things that are administrative duties, because typically the designer, the architect, is going to have certain administrative duties. As long as it's not design related, okay, you can have the owner can say, I want to take on these additional responsibilities. Now, the one thing you need to keep in mind is that duty that the owner is now going to do something that requires impartiality? Okay, you have a contract with the owner. Don't want them to be determining things that they don't have, they aren't impartial to, i.e., cost more money, or they don't have to pay as much on a timely basis, whatever it may be. The architect does have a license. So when we were talking about overall with the dispute resolution or anything else, one of the things that the architect brings to the table is a professional license and a duty to abide by that professional license. So they're arguably somewhat impartial. Okay? At least they're more impartial than the owner is. So when you're changing or agreeing to some duties that the owner wants to do, you need to make sure it's not something where you're going to rely on the impartiality of somebody, in which case, no. Some of the things they can do is that the architect typically does traditionally, payment application review. So when we go through payments, we'll talk about it, but a lot of times projects will be billed on a monthly basis on a percent complete. And so the architect is typically the one that will review what has been submitted by the contractor as far as what they believe the percent complete was for, say, drywall, or for plumbing, or for electrical. Okay, so they do that on a monthly basis, kind of as a check and balance to the contractor, which when we're talking about the second class about design build, the fact that when you have a design builder, owner lose that check and balance because the designer typically works for the contractor. Okay, but the application review is one of those things that if you trust the owner, you can have them do that review and approval of the percent complete. Another one that the architect typically does is the determination of substantial completion. When we talk about time, the time frame for completion of work and construction is from commencement date to substantial completion, not final completion, substantial completion. And the typical standard for substantial completion is to the extent when the capital W work, okay, the work itself that the contractor is responsible for, is sufficiently complete to allow the owner to utilize the work for its intended use. Okay, so with that standard, who determines that? That's going to be typically the architect. It's going to use that standard to apply to determine whether or not substantial completion has been achieved. Okay, and that's important because substantial completion is typically where all the liability and risk is. Okay, if you're late on substantial completion, that's when you can incur damages for being late and having delays. After substantial completion, the owner's moved in. Final completion is simply following up with paperwork, warranty items, the giving warranty documentation, owner training, okay, on how their employees are going to run the facilities themselves, operation and maintenance manuals, and completion of punch lists. Punch list is items that do not necessarily affect the owner's use and enjoyment. It's things like touch-up paint, replacing a bulb, or for that matter, if you have to have a temporary thing like, for instance, lock sets that may be late, you can put temporary lock sets in and replace them with the permanent ones later on. So those are all punch list items, but it'd be things that wouldn't change the use and enjoyment of the owner. Because that's such a significant issue, to have the owner make that determination is a problem, because guess what? Again, you're exposed to dollars for delays otherwise. So you really want to have someone who is somewhat divested from that particular risk item of delays, and that's the architect that would do that evaluation. Any questions on that? Okay. And I will tell you, we're going to go to substantial completions. We're going to talk about delays, things like that. It's just that each of these component parts all kind of blend together. So we'll follow back up with this later on when we talk about substantial completion. Initial decision maker. So one of the biggest problems whenever there's a conflict where someone has a dispute is you have to make an initial decision. Someone has to say, all right, subject to mediation, arbitration, whatever, right now, I'm going to make a decision for the parties going forward.
You ready, bub?
And a lot of times, the architect will be the one that'll be that initial decision maker. They'll still be subject to later on dispute resolution, but you need someone to at least continue with the project. You should actually be able to get paid for this much money, or we believe that you're right, you get this. So, but for the architect, he probably is the best one to make that initial decision. The architect is the one that knows the design. They're out there, they're intimate with the project, so they probably are the best one to be able to do that. This is not typically the owner, right? Because the owner, again, is not impartial. However, if the owner has an owner representative or a construction manager that's well respected, then you may be able to agree to that. Right? So it just depends. Again, it doesn't require impartiality. You trust the person to do that decision making. Another one is confirmation of completed work. One of the things that the architect is responsible for is reviewing work as it's being completed to determine whether or not it meets the requirements of the contract documents. Okay? If the owner has an owner representative, again, like a construction manager or someone that you can trust, then sure, you may be able to do that. You don't need a license per se for that. It's not design related. You're just confirming that the work matches up with the design of contract document. That'd be one of the things you could also switch over and have someone not the designer. And then the last one we talked about last week is processing of change orders. Okay, when we looked at the language on change orders, it had that the architect is going to do the drafting of it and they're going to sign it. The owner of the contract. Are they really necessary for that? Probably not. Administrative function, and guess what? You can do that directly with and the contractor. And the contractor can draft those up. Okay? So when we're talking about design responsibilities, some of these things from an administrative standpoint, you can shift over to the owner. Others, if it relates to design, you had to have a designer of record. And by the way, a lot of times the contracts, which we'll see, actually requires that the owner provide an architect that has a license. And if they want to fire them, they have to put somebody else in their place. Take on that role of responsibility, and it's not the owner. It is another design professional. All right, the last thing we're going to talk about is design versus performance specifications. And about 15, 20 years ago, this really became an issue. Architects, it used to be you put the paper and they would design everything.
That's somewhere cool.
The advent of AutoCAD, all the computer specifications that are all out there, they don't spend as much time, and by the way, designers also don't get paid as much as they used to.
Hey, I'm finna lean at them houses.
Just as with anything else. So one of the problems that designers will do is they start hedging their bets. So, like that window example, they would actually design into the design, meaning that for that window, they would say,
and it's a rift there too.
It's this thickness, the mullion, okay, or this type of extruded face this much on center, and that's what that design is. But then, oh, by the way, as part of the design, it's got to meet 100-mile-an-hour wind load. It's got to have value of 0.5. So now it's got performance criteria and prescriptive specifications, and they don't match up. So the architect, in that case, well, you should have done this one versus this one. They have the choice now. So one of the things you have to do is identify those specifications and call those out. Okay, because you do have the right to rely on the accuracy of the design. This is called the Spearing Doctrine. Okay, so the Spearing Doctrine is where the owner,
I got no drip, no guns.
Sufficient for the purpose of construction. Okay, it's used as a defense for workmanship. So I need to be able to that design, what it tells me to do. The owner can't say, well, you should have done that. From a flexibility standpoint, you should have done to do this. Now, if even it's from the design, no, I have the right to rely on it. I have the right to rely on the fact that it says 2 feet 6 inches. Even though it's 2 feet 10 inches, the design says 2 feet 6 inches. I designed it to that. I built it to that because that's what's there, and I had the right to rely on it. Okay? Now, I still may have an obligation if something that is part of the structure itself, or the renovation or something.
I know, got a 50.
I can say, hey, listen, the space for working putting this thing, I've only got 2 feet 4 inches, and it says 2 feet 6. It doesn't fit. What do you want me to do? But you, as a contractor, you have the right to rely on the design that's provided by the design professional. Okay? Owners may include statements that contractors cannot rely on the accuracy of the contract document. Crazy. Okay, this is an attempt to remove the Spearing Doctrine, shifting the architect design back to the contractor.
I want that.
If I can't rely on the accuracy of the design, that's a double-edged sword. That means that, okay, so I can ignore it. If I choose not to, the room that you had that was a 10 foot by 10 foot room, I'm going to make it 8 by 8. I don't have to rely on it. Okay, I can do whatever I want. So you get to an absurdity when you say you cannot rely on the accuracy of the design.
You want to hit that riff? Never mind, I went for
Spearing Doctrine talks about is you have to be able to.
He's slimy.
Okay. So, as I said earlier,
With the lie.
requirements of the system
I got
contractor
sniped, bro.
fall innocent party compliance with certain standards. Okay, whether that be prescriptive definitions of the scope of work or some other standards that may be
I had to put out the furry.
like, for instance, you have to meet ANSI code or ASCI code, whatever it may be. They have all these different requirements from different manufacturers or industries, whatever it may be, plus their design. In those cases, when we're talking about contract documents, that's thing to do with order of precedence. Okay? So again, if we stick with that order of precedence, that also allows you to eliminate some of that design liability kind of shift onto the contractor. See how all this stuff kind of ties together? Okay, so they have one clause that says one thing, you can address it somewhere else. So that's how these contracts evolved, where even though there may be a liability to written one place, first of all, well, it's not a no, it's just how much, and then how am I going to control that risk? If I've got it, I need to use another clause that addresses that. I mean, like order of precedence. Okay? As we said earlier, certain systems are standard to have partial design build, like for instance, fire protection, curtain wall, windows. However, they unlearn the fact that there may be
I don't know
prescriptive
what I'm finna do.
specifications that are in conflict with the performance of the standards. Okay, you have to call these out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the architect and owner, the
I got
ability to
you.
say,
Right.
greater than as we talked about down in the
Jump,
precedent.
dude.
So, I don't know which one is greater and one is. But if the one doesn't
Yo.
that we can argue. So to the extent that you can address those early, I talked about also the division of series and requirements, specifications, okay, or contract documents. And so in those specifications, always look to see if they are in conflict with what's in the contract documents from the standpoint of general conditions and the contract itself. And if they are, call those out, even if you have an order of precedence. But that order of precedence will take it to say, guess what, the agreement takes first, general conditions second, then the drawing specifications. But even if you do have a conflict, you should probably call that out, let everyone know there is a conflict. Okay? And then we're going to go to the A201, the second half of this class. That's where you're going to see the contractor has the right to rely on performance criteria at this point. Plus, it's in there to talk about designs build up, then what you can rely on. Okay. So, any questions on that? Okay. We're going to take it's 5:27. We're going to come back at 5:30. Look through the language to 102 in the.
Invitation here, but I can't go in. I'm in there. I'm in there. Yeah. They know Ben's getting up on me. I don't think we're talking about this enough.
Did I just see a blue pump?
Attention.
I think which they were here, Chris.
His building. Wow.
Oh, nigga.
Who you fighting, fam?
Flying head. His teammate.
Nigga, I don't know where his teammate is, man.
Nigga, who the fuck you fighting?
Motherfucking aim ass.
They died? You killed them?
Hell no.
Then where these niggas just go?
I don't know,
It was
cuz.
a pink. It was a pinks. What the hell? I don't know, cuz. Watch out from over there then. Fuck it. But I ain't got the mess to fight them niggas though. What's up?
Oh, slurp fighter. They did not loot this.
Yeah, this place, not even cap, this place is underrated. I'm still confused, like where bro go? I got a big
Man, them
pop.
niggas disappeared, fam. I ain't gonna.
Let me take that first. Salty. Never mind. You want this AR? Blue AR?
I'm Gucci. Hey, they fighting over here.
Alright, bet.
Need some grenade ammo. I ain't gonna.
I got some. I got a grenade launcher too.
Hey, grenade these niggas.
We just did all that for none. Where they at?
Just love to disappear, fam. They probably in this.
They ain't in there.
I ain't got no max. Oh, he low. He low than a beach.
He tried to turn. I don't like this position. I'm gone. You got a mini?
They already took the big pot. Oh no, I
Damn.
took. No, I'm Gucci.
You took a slurp. Hey, it's a rift over here. Come on, come this way. No, I don't think we gonna make it. Fuck it. Fuck it, we cool.
Airplane.
It is chest in here though. Oh shit.
Nigga, damn. Hey, pussy.
I ain't got no match for all this, bro. He one tap, Chris. He one tap up here. Ask for that shit. Good shit, dude.
Oh,
Good shit.
nigga, it's more niggas. Please be a bot.
It's one dude. Alright, I'm finna edit this way. I'm finna come this way.
It's two.
I ain't got no mask, cuz. So you got mask like a motherfucker. I know I like that position. Really looking for my loot. I ain't got none. I'm getting a helicopter this game. That's what I'm finna go do.